Welcome to FreeMMOStation. My name's Skylight, and today I'm going to give you my first impressions on a new third-person MOBA, Paragon.
FreeMMOStation.com.
So exactly what is Paragon? Paragon is a third-person shooter, MOBA, main focus on the MOBA part of that, but it also has card collecting mechanics. So some people kind of likened it to Paladins, which is not wrong. It is just definitely way more standard MOBA-ish than a lot of people were probably prepared for, and I know I was not quite prepared for it. It was very unexpected how similar it is to something like Dota or League of Legends is. You have a jungle, you have 3 lanes. In fact, I can see elements from many different MOBAs, and that's a good thing. There are some very interesting mechanics, which we will probably dive into in depth. And guys, if I miss anything, or if I didn't quite elucidate any sort of mechanic that you want, well, explained better, then please ask in the comments below, and I will try to do my best, or maybe somebody else will answer it. So, this is a first impressions. This is not a full review. However, I am going to heavily critique this game because this is a genre that I am very comfortable with. And specifically, I am Platinum 4 in Smite, which this game is incredibly similar to. So hopefully, my criticism will carry just a little bit of weight. Now, I like MOBAs a lot. I play every single MOBA. I think there's like 2 MOBA that I haven't played. That's like Heroes of New Earth and then like Smash Muck Champions, something like that. But I pretty much played every single other MOBA. So coming into this, I was really hyped about this game. Even though it seemed, seemingly aesthetically wise, and potentially mechanically, it seemed like it's trying to be a third-person shooter more than a MOBA. Truth is that it is far more like a MOBA than something like Paladins was, or Gigantic. Even though I would consider, I don't know if you consider Paladins a MOBA exactly. Maybe, kind of. Maybe, it depends. But Gigantic is definitely a MOBA, even though it's so unique and so different. Paragon, though, is actually really very standard. Like, from the abilities to the characters themselves, they just seemingly are just all kind of ripped from other games. That's not a bad thing, especially when you're just starting a game, you're just starting your roster of characters, you want to use abilities that are kind of comfortable, but just like, there's not really that originality that I felt whenever I played Gigantic. Gigantic, its game mode, its maps, its characters, its its actual abilities, how they level up those abilities, all that was really, really ingenious, I think. But coming into Paragon, even with the card system that they're utilizing, it's not as intuitive as Paladins. It's definitely way more limiting than any item shop or leveling up sort of mechanism that I've played in any other MOBA. Essentially, what the item shop is, and we need to talk about this because this is a huge component to the game, right? It's sort of its gimmick, right? Get into the game, you have to actually collect the cards, okay? So it is like a CCG, you have to collect the cards. And this, in a way, if I could translate it, it's like playing League of Legends without the ability to buy every item. You could only buy the suggested items or something like that. You can, however, when you do have certain cards, you have item cards, you have active and passive cards, and then when you get these cards, you can actually slot them in-game, then you have these buff cards. So you have cards that actually kind of attach to these other cards and kind of level it up. So there is progression and there is a little bit of choice, but it is nowhere near the choice that you have in League of Legends, in Smite, or in Dota 2. And specifically, if you guys are comfortable with those MOBA shops, you know that Dota 2 item shop, the items are generally like active abilities. They don't just add stats. Like a single item, even a low-level item, can completely change how you play the game, like giving you stealth or allowing you to boost or blink or something like that. So, League of Legends and Smite tend to have a lot of stat items, but they still kind of add on passive effects and such. Where in Paragons, of course, I haven't played with all the cards. This is where the first impression envelope comes in from. But it seems like everything is just kind of stat enhancers. Like, nothing really changes how you play. I guess depending on the stat that you increase, it's going to change a little bit how you play. If you're going to be a little bit tankier, if you're going to be a little bit more damagey, if you're going to do damage with your abilities or with your auto attacks. But overall, you're not going to completely change your archetype entirely, Like, it's not going to completely change how you can play like the item shop in Dota 2. So this CCG mechanic of the game, which is sort of its gimmick, is actually, honestly, I think in my opinion, holding it back. It's really simplistic. Unless we get some really crazy cards, like on-hit damage, or changing, like alternating different damage types, or something crazy like that, it's going to be boring. So it does have potential. It could be really good. And I do think that the whole collecting card system is a really good way to kind of get players used to the game. I guess Heroes of the Storm used to do that, how they limited the different abilities. But overall, at the moment, my first impressions, I was completely unimpressed as somebody who is competitive with MOBAs. But then again, I will admit that this game is sort of aiming toward that crowd of people that normally don't like MOBAs. And in saying that, it's still like for aiming for that crowd, seemingly, it really plays like a standard MOBA. It is incredibly slow paced. I mean, from the gameplay that you're watching, I'm trying to select the most action-packed scenes and such, but still you might notice that you walk incredibly slow. Now, you can actually have a traverse mode, which is an idea they got from Paladin / Heroes of the Storm, probably Heroes of the Storm mainly, where you can sort of mount up. In Heroes of the Storm, you literally mount up. In this game, you just kind of go into a travel mode and you can move a little bit faster. Everybody has their own unique animations for doing so. It takes a little bit of time to get into this mode. You can still move while turning or transforming into the travel mode, but if you get hit, then you can't go into travel mode, which is just the same as Heroes of the Storm and as Paladins. And you're going to need to because this map is really big. Now, I will say the map design is incredible. It's really freaking awesome. They do have sort of like an invisibility lake thing. There's like a misty lake that gives you invisibility, so there sort of is a bush system like in Heroes of the Storm / League of Legends. But then you also literally have places that actually, like, the foliage will cover and hide people, which is pretty cool. So there is a jungle, and not only is there a jungle, it seems that there are junglers. There's items to jungle, and this is where they actually got some ideas from the game. It's a mobile MOBA actually, but it's actually really popular, called Vainglory, where there's actually there's a sort of harvesting mechanic where there's an item in the jungle that literally is constantly harvesting points for you, and you go and you can collect those points. Now, you do also have... Now, I want to say one thing. If you do see gameplay of the jungle, you're going to notice that the models are actually completely untextured, unskinned. They look like Play-Doh. Game is super early access, so a lot of the criticisms I have are probably and potentially could be changed and probably will be changed. So just keep that in mind. Super early first impressions. Again, not trying to make excuses for me or the game. It's how, it is. Anyways, so the jungle is kind of boring. It's not as fun or as interesting as Smite's jungle. Smite's jungle is one of my favorites. It's not as unique as Dawngate as what that was. It's not as cool as League of Legends. It's really simplistic right now, but then again, I also kind of don't understand the jungle exactly, and I don't think people really understand the meta. In fact, the only other jungle character that we can utilize is actually locked at level 7. Also, speaking of that, I didn't get to play as an assassin. I only got to play as casters and some support casters, basically, and there's also some ADC type characters. But from what I've experienced so far, the roster of characters is really small, and I can't really get a feel for the meta. Like, I don't know if there's really going to be dedicated supports, if there's going to be well, there's probably going to be ADCs, but I don't know if there's going to be like 2 ADCs. I don't really understand the meta. It's not as sort of founded as League of Legends and Smite, especially Smite because Smite was built off of League of Legends. So, but this game, it does seem like a very usual MOBA. It's just I haven't seen a healer type character. There's a shield type character, so I did see that. And there are very much ADC or attack damage oriented characters. And you do have separation of physical damage, and in this game it's called energy, but literally it's translated from League of Legends and Smite to magic damage. Yeah, it's the same. It's exactly the same. Certain attacks and abilities either do physical or magical. I haven't seen any characters that do both. It's mainly been like casters and nuke mages do energy damage, and then you have the ADC type characters that do physical, or the assassins. And I'm sure we're gonna get a slew of characters that can probably mix and match. And all in all, though, what I found for the characters was that aesthetically, I'm gonna have to agree with Cliff Bleszinski here. He said that they were kind of they're just kind of usual, they don't look like anything special. Whenever I was in Full Sail University, we got to view a lot of models, from the other classmates and everything. All these models, all these characters really seem kind of like the usual stuff that a first-time designer would make. They just don't really pop out at you. I mean, I can't fault them, like the textures look good. The game itself physically looks good. It makes my eyeballs feel nice, but there's really nothing that makes it stand out with the characters themselves. In fact, you can see the direct inspiration for a lot of these characters, either from Warhammer, from freaking Clash of Clans. The mage in this game literally looks like the mage from Clash of Clans. Like, tell me right now, side to side, tell me it doesn't look like the mage from Clash of Clans. Done. But there's a lot of characters, and then when you look at their abilities, right? Because playing these different MOBAs, I play all MOBAs. I play MOBAs for very specific characters because you can't get that sort of a unique game feel between these different MOBAs. Like League of Legends is not going to have multi-unit control, right? So I got to go play Dota. League of Legends isn't going to be as fast-paced or as mechanical with melee characters as it is in Smite. Like, Smite is really intense with melee characters, especially like people like Circuit. But League of Legends also has its own unique sort of mechanics with minion play and how it plays with the jungle. So, and Heroes of the Storm has like the specialty class, the specialist class. So all these different MOBAs have these unique archetypes and unique characters that you might want to flip and flop and play in between them. Of course, there's maps and game modes, but it's really the characters that make these games. I think we all can agree on that. So what in Paragon makes me want to play it? Honestly, I haven't seen a character that really made me want to play Paragon yet. Either fighting against them or with them. Some abilities seem seemed more interesting than others, and how they sort of mechanically fit together. Like, for instance, you're going to see a lot of gameplay of the character Howitzer. This dude is very much a Rumble-inspired character. There's also a character in Paladins called Ruckus, who looks the very same, almost certainly inspired by Rumble. So this guy, he's an AoE sort of caster, damager dude, like rockets and landmines and craziness. So basically, he's very, very simple to use. And all these characters really are simple to use. But his combo for his ultimate is actually probably the most interesting and mechanical that I found. He jumps in the air and he shoots down a rain of rockets. However, which is obviously inspired by Pharah from Overwatch, here is where it gets kind of interesting, is that on your way down, as long as you keep using abilities, you can stay in the air and hover, and you also have a better angle to shoot things. And he also is like one of the only characters, one of the very few characters that actually has a knockback effect. And for a three-dimensional, yeah, this game is vertical, right? Like, it's not like Smite where it's flat, horizontal. There's actually verticality. You can jump up, there's boosters and stuff, there's leaps. There's also like 3D terrain, like people can jump from cliffs and stuff and jump away and hide down underground. So there is verticality in the game, but as for characters taking advantage of that verticality, there's very few characters. Like the junglers do have leaps, okay? And the people that generally would play in mid lane also kind of have like either like a blink or something like that so they can get up and gank. So in the jungle, there's actually a sort of like a down. There's like a balcony of trees above you, so no one can see you as you're running through the jungle. But it feels really cool. It's almost like you're in caves, right? And then to actually gank lanes, you have to jump up into the lane. Like you jump over like a little hill, and you can gank the lanes. So you need an actual leap or a blink or a fly or something like that. But so most characters can't just go and roam and gank, like it's actually a little bit more difficult. So that's kind of interesting, you know, in League of Legends and Dota, people that can go through trees or over walls, same with Smite, that gives a little bit more mechanics, and because of the map design, you know, it can be a little bit more interesting, and I do appreciate that fact. However, I just found that a lot of characters couldn't really take advantage of more of the map. It's like junglers can take advantage of the jungle, obviously, that's simple design. But what about the rest of the map? Because there are places that have overhangs, there are like these bridges, there's different parts of the lane that you can kind of get up onto like a little hill. Like the map itself is really interestingly designed, but I don't think that the characters themselves, most of them at least, really take advantage of that map design. Maybe we'll see as more characters get introduced into the game, because I guess I can admit to this, you know, any new MOBA that has come out has, honestly, its characters have been really stagnant and very usual, you know? I mean, from Heroes of the Storm to Smite, you know, you can kind of see the inspiration from their character designs, but then you still see some characters that kind of go above and beyond, like Abathur with Heroes of the Storm. That dude, oh my god, that guy is insane. And, like, in Smite with, I guess you can say with Fenrir, how it compares to Warwick in League of Legends. You know, it's like miles and miles, just simply better, more fun, mechanical, more strategy, more you can do. It's all in all just a better character, and I think everyone can admit to that. So in this game, though, I haven't really found anybody that compares that might just be all in all just better, right? I just haven't yet. Now, I haven't played with all the characters. Some of them seem a little bit fun. I think mainly it's going to have to be the characters that are actually locked, which makes sense because they're kind of harder to use mechanically. So they are locked right now. I think those guys, the assassin and the other jungler, those might be the guys that I'm more interested in. And honestly, I had a huge amount of fun with the healer. But then again, here's another example of, well, actually, pretty much all these characters are examples of stolen abilities, okay? So the healer, I think her name is Muriel. Her ultimate is literally the ultimate from Athena from Smite. It's almost exactly the same. I do believe there's a knockback effect added onto it, but it's exactly the same. She does have one unique thing, and this is something that pretty much only Paragon can do, okay? And I think we need to see more stuff like this. Okay, so she has a shield. Well, she throws an orb, okay? And this is very interesting. She literally throws an orb, and this can miss, okay? This is stuff that we see in Overwatch, right? Where abilities can miss, even if they're healing abilities and stuff like that. So she can throw an orb, and she can lay it on the ground for a teammate to walk over, or maybe herself, so she can use it on herself if she so desires. So there is that sort of decision, and there is sort of that mechanical play where you actually have to aim and you know, land it on your teammates, or what have you. So you have to actually throw it on your teammates, land it, or throw it on the ground, and the orb can be picked up, and it gives you a speed boost, and it gives you a shield. I mean, that's it. It's no, like, flat healing. It's not easy to use at all. So, like, a lot of the times I would see somebody trying to charge in, rush in. I forget what his name is, but he's some big blue smurf dude, and he can leap super high. He does a big AoE slam attack, and he can raise shields, and overall, that guy seems pretty fun, pretty interesting, pretty cool. But trying to actually land my orb on him as he's going in so that he's a little bit more tankier and so he has a little bit more speed is kind of hard, especially when people are moving in and out of their travel modes and moving really fast, especially in the hectic combat, you know? It's ridiculous. It's crazy. It can get really fun. It absolutely can. But most of the time with most abilities, most characters, in most situations, it's not going to be like that. You're not... It's just gonna feel like really, really slow-paced MOBA gameplay. In fact, most of the game, from start to finish, is gonna feel like how most MOBAs feel at the very beginning. The very first 10 minutes of most MOBAs, you know how it's like slower paced and then it amps up? The Paragon just kind of feels like those first 10 minutes for the whole game, you know? Where Heroes of the Storm has made a design to try to get rid of the first 10 minutes and try to get into right into the team fights, right into the action, right into pushing and sieging. Paragon is like the opposite. It's all about that laning, kind of. It just feels really weird. I don't really know how to explain it. It's just slow-paced. None of the abilities actually really kind of call to me. None of them really get me super excited. I think Howitzer is kind of fun, but really, honestly, I feel like if he was in any other game, I don't know, it's a very basic archetype. I mean, in fact, all these characters are very basic. Okay, so I can go on and on about how basically Smite is kind of like deeper, more complicated. Like this actually feels like a simpler version of Smite, despite its mechanical differences with it being a vertical game. So, for instance, in Smite, even auto attacks are a little bit more complicated because auto attacks actually have auto attack chains. And if you don't haven't played Smite, basically in Smite, if you're three, normally it's three, okay? Sometimes it's 4 auto attacks, but basically your auto attacks have chains. So the first auto attack and the second auto attack are sometimes different. So the first might do half damage, the second might do double damage, and then the third might be an AoE attack. So even your auto attacks, the chains of the auto attacks actually mechanically are very kind of different. Between the different characters, it sometimes is hugely important, especially if it's an AoE auto attack. You want to get attack speed so you can constantly AoE and constantly do a huge amount of DPS in team fights. Like, it can get really insane, especially with all the different item builds. But in this game, you don't have auto attack chains. You can, however, level up your auto attacks, which is kind of interesting. But all in all, I don't think it makes up for that. And the card system is also very simplistic, which makes the game easier to learn, but at the same time, you're taking away all the complexity of the item shops from other games, and you're not giving the uniquity that upgrading like direct abilities has with Heroes of the Storm and Gigantic. All in all, it just seems like other MOBAs do something a little bit better, a little bit more. Now, Paragon, though, I will say that Paragon looks good. Okay, it probably will play good. It's made by Epic Games, Unreal Engine. I just want to say this, guys. If you are interested in playing this game, it just feels like it's honestly made for consoles. It feels like it's made for PS4. It looks like a PS4 game with its aesthetic, with its design. It plays like a PS4 game. Skill shots are really easy to hit. They really are. The game is not only slow, but there's a lot of times where I'll miss a skill shot or barely miss, basically, and it'll still hit. And keep in mind that I'm actually playing on European servers as an American, and so even with the ping, I'm landing way too many skill shots. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a shooter. Like, you still will miss some shots. You still need to actually aim and focus, and especially at the highest level of play, it's going to come into play. But all in all, I just felt like Smite was so much more nail-biting. When I'm doing a one-on-one as ADC versus ADC, it is so much more intense. Landing your leaps, landing your skill shots just seems so much harder and so much more vital. And in this game, everything just kind of like, I don't know, it's just slow. It just kind of feels muddy. I can't really tangibly say exactly why in every single instance for every single event. But, because it is a first impressions after all, but that is my vague, ambiguous feeling on the game right now. Is I love this genre, and that's why I'm really critiquing this game. But all in all, other games that I have played do things a little bit bigger, a little bit better, a little bit more interesting. If you want to play sieging, play a little bit more strategic, or you were going to go to Heroes of the Storm. Or, the item shops and the complexity of Dota 2 is also super fun, especially with the characters that have multiple units, like Broodmother. It's amazing. And the minion play, the mechanics with the farming, with League of Legends and the jungle and all the objective play with that game and the mechanics of those characters are also very unique to that game. All these different games, and mainly we're going to compare it to Smite. Is this game a Smite killer? Because it completely is directly competing with Smite, because Smite's actually moving to PS4 now. Smite's also got it's competitive on Xbox, it's competitive on PC, it might even have a PS4 league. Or maybe there's going to be cross-platform play, as we've been seeing in the news. But Smite is absolutely its competitor. Gigantic is also in the realm there, and Battleborn, and there's so many other games, Paladins coming out, that really appeal to a lot of different people. And maybe, I think the people that are going to play Paragon, basically, are likely very ignorant of the MOBA genre, and please excuse me guys, it just happens. You're probably ignorant of the mechanics and the gameplay of other MOBAs, and you just think Paragon kind of looks pretty, it looks good. It does, it really does look good, but it's got a really long way to go before it actually competes with the big boys. That's all I've got to say, guys. It probably will be competitive, honestly, backed by Sony. Sony is really into pushing competitive games and free-to-play games, and that's why we got Paragon coming here. Epic Games also has a slew of games coming out that look very interesting, Paragon being one of them. However, I'm gonna say that Smite has so much more content and depth to it. Paragon has the potential, but it's gonna take a really long time. Then again, guys, remember, not a full review. This is a first impression critique of the early access build. Who knows where the game can turn out to? We've seen Paladins. Paladins has completely changed ever since our first impression. They took the criticism to heart and completely changed the game, and now it is way more exciting. So we'll see where Paragon goes from here. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Skylant with FreeMMOStation. If you like my beautiful voice, if you like my criticism, go to my personal channel as Skylant Games, and also you can check out my stream. All the footage here was actually taken directly from my stream, so hopefully you think that's high quality enough to go check it out, or like and subscribe here. I'm always here, having fun, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.